build global products, and don't just think of Malaysia or Southeast Asia as a market. Think of the world as your market. And I think you can really start to see yourself scale in a big way. Now, when you do that, that means you can hire global teams.
Welcome to the iSearch podcast. Today we have Roshan from Leaderonomics on the show. So Leaderonomics is a leadership development firm to help solve society's challenge through leadership transformation. So today I'll be discussing with Roshan on the secret to building high-performing teams in 2022. So welcome to the show, Roshan.
Yep, thanks a lot. Great to be here.
All right, so let's begin. So could you share some tips for SMEs to build a high-performing team?
Yeah, so I think the struggle with SMEs is there are different stages of growth, right? If you look at the SME, there's the early stage where it's just about how do I figure out how to find a product market fit, meaning that I'm trying to build a business, but I don't know whether my product I can sell, whether I can get revenue. And usually during that phase, the most important thing is not about, okay, can I build good culture, build a team, we just want the people in there to be able to help us to get our first revenue. But then we evolve, we start to say, okay, our product, people accept our product, people like the product. And then we realize that after that, the key is how do I scale that? How do I make sure that I'm not selling only 100, I'm selling thousands and hopefully getting into the revenues of millions and double-digit millions and so on and so forth, right? And that's where it becomes very critical at that stage for you to figure out how do you build high-performance teams. And high-performance teams, there's a number of different caveats. Of course, Google has the famous study that says that number one is psychological safety. If a person feels very safe, they are willing to go above and beyond to do work for you. So to do that, right, you got to create a culture. Now, most of the time, most SMEs, we don't think about culture because we just assume, right? It's a default. We are cool, we are this, we are that. So we assume the culture will automatically slowly replicate what we think will be the right sort of environment for us. However, what we forget is that as we start to become bigger, we hire 5 people, 10 people, 20 people. The culture of your company is very dictated by the default of your country. So in our case, Malaysia is our default. Now, Malaysia is low productivity, right? Very low productivity. And our default culture is the GLC, that old-fashioned bureaucratic, cover my ass, wait for boss to tell me to do what. That's typically what, and then nobody will talk and nobody will say anything because we're all scared, right? Because we learn from young, in school, you make noise, teacher whack you, just keep quiet, be a good. So automatically, many CEOs, SMEs, I'm very cool, my door open, I encourage people to talk, but somehow when we have meetings, nobody talks. Let's say, because we are inheriting the default culture. So the starting point, when you start to see your business start to scale a bit, you're moving from 10, 20, 30 employees, you have to intentionally design a culture. That one is critical. And intentionally means you say, what kind of behavior will I tolerate? What kind of behavior won't I tolerate? What kind of attitudes do I want to see? What kind of mindsets? What kind of beliefs? And all these things. Once you figure out what it is, then you can start to put in rituals. That means, I'm going to create this ritual so that, for example, one of the rituals I created when we started early on is that I realized my people don't like to get criticized. So I created rituals for each of the teams. So my TV team, which make videos and so on, I said, okay, every Friday we have this ritual. Monday to Friday you make videos. On Friday you have 4 o'clock. Everyone, the whole company will come, watch the videos that you made and criticize you. Wow, they don't like it at first because this one you should change. Then what do they know about videos? They are just normal employees. What do they learn? But I say, never mind. We just smile. Your rule of the ritual is smile, cannot say anything. Thank you. That's it. But after a while, they took some of the feedback. The video quality started getting better and better and better. But you see, that's what a ritual is. I created a culture where you're not scared of feedback. You're not scared of being criticized, and you embrace to make your work even better. So many SMEs forget about rituals, putting together things, because rituals dictate behaviors, so that's culture. The second thing you have to think about is structure. People behave according to structure, your policy, your rewards, your recognition. And today with technology, there are tools like Happily and Budaya and many awesome tools where you can actually structure rewards, recognition, and the way people do things can be self-rewarded, peer-rewarded, using technology, right? So think about culture, think about structure. Obviously, the first part when you first set up your SME, you already thought about business model, right? Now the last thing you have to do is alignment. The hardest part in SMEs to build is communication, because you see a leader. and you play this game before, the telephone game. You whisper to the next fella, next fella's ear, right? And you pass the message. The message always at the end, always wrong one. Correct? Why is it always wrong? So think about it in a company. The CEO says, okay, I want you to do this to the leaders. The leaders go down. By the time go down to the employees, the message somehow will come out wrong one. Right? So the last part we have to think about all the time as leaders of SMEs is how do we keep alignment? How do we make sure that what we say is translated across the organization the right way? But I think if you take care of those things, culture, structure, of course at the start is business model. You got to get the business model right. Once you get the business model, you think about culture, structure, and alignment. I think generally speaking, you will build pretty high performance organizations and teams.
I think what you mentioned at the start, you're saying that when SMEs start, we only start with like less than 5 employees. Then as we grow, then only we build the culture, right? So when is like the right time to build a culture? Like how many employees, then only you start integrating culture?
So you can start from the starting point, but here's the problem. You know, many SMEs will, and I always tell SMEs, I advise them, I say, look, you have 5 employees, but you don't have a business model. That means you may have 20 employees. Some rich startups are got highly funded one, but their business model is not validated, meaning they're not sure whether they can make money. They're not sure whether the customer will pay for the product and service. So I say, until you get that right, don't bother about culture. Because once you get your business model right, then you can start to build your culture around your business model, around your go-to-market strategy, around your entire business, right? But let's say you got 2 employees, but you already have your business model solid. Okay, start thinking about culture because you've got your product market fit, right? So to me, the starting point is culture, not number of employees, but when you get your product market fit, you get that, then you can start thinking about culture.
Okay, got it. And then once the culture is sorted out and also the structure is in place, then how do you like ensure that the communication is also in place so that like what you say, it doesn't miss out throughout the journey?
So a lot of it is structural, right? Even communication is structural. So for example, one of the things we started to do is we use this app called Nicole. And Nicole is where we put all our knowledge in our entire company there, right? So anytime people want to learn about this, about that, making videos, what's the branding, what's this, there's a repository. Now the other piece that we use is that Nicole allows me to do like Insta Live, but only to my employees. So once a month I'll do a live and say, here's what's happening. And every employee will hear from me direct, so it's not, yes, you say that's a town hall, but town halls also, most people don't ask questions. So you got to create an environment and structure where people can just ask questions, anonymous or otherwise. Now, another tool I use a lot is Happily. So this one, I've put certain rules. Happily allows me on a daily basis to get feedback from my employees. But for employees also to give feedback on themselves, on their bosses, and so on and so forth. So we collect a lot of this data, and that data enables us to communicate and re-communicate correctly. Now, the other thing I do in Happily is that I put a little rule in there. My employees don't know this, but essentially once a month or once every other month, they will get a tweet and say, what's wrong with Roshan? What must he improve? What must he do better? So they will say, okay, Roshan should do this more. He should learn how to. So I get this feedback that comes to me directly, right? And I'm able to say, oh, that's what they're thinking about. Like today, I got this feedback from someone who said, look, why the business are so segmented today? And I said, oh, okay, maybe I'm not communicating so well. Why did we have to split our digital business and our corporate business and our community business? Why did we split it up, with different brands and so on? So I realized that the fact that they're asking a question means my communication is not so aligned, right? So now I have to work on alignment. So you can actually create structures in place for you to check in to know whether things are aligned or not, right? Now, most of the time, we depend on anecdotal. We say, oh, this person told me this, told me that. Most of the time, those type of information is skewed. It's not really accurate, because it's a balance sheet approach. You know what a balance sheet is? December 31st, year X, right? This is my financial statement. But can bluff one, because on that year, December 31st, you quickly ask people to pay you cash. Your cash looks good, everything. But the moment that January 1st, everything gone, right? So it's a point in time, right? But it's good to have continuous data streams, because if you continuously, like for me, I have one of the things I get from Happily is on a daily basis, I see each of my managers who manage teams, what their employees think of them. What's the relationship between them and their employees? And so I can pick up a phone and call up one of my direct reports and say, hey, what's happening? Your team is not so aligned. In your team, you're not so aligned, They say, no. I say, hey, you just Just have some conversations. Trust me.
I see.
And then they have, and then, so there are tools today to allow you, even SMEs, right? It's relatively cheap, right? I mean, all these tools that are out there to allow you to create that alignment. But don't start to create a culture and alignment or when you don't even have a business model. Because if you cannot sell a product, forget about building a team. Your team comes when you're very clear that I have a business and it's sustainable and there's a business model. Okay, let's scale this. Let's build a team. Let's figure out how to get it to other countries. Let's figure out how to get it to new markets. Okay, good. Then you have to start really thinking about high performance teams.
So for the app, the employee can enter their feedback anonymously, so you wouldn't know which employee that enters.
And the more feedback they give, they get coins. Now, what I did was I integrated my reward structure also in the app. So the more coins you have, you can get Lazada voucher. I got 500 over vouchers from every company, Watson to what. So for employees, it's like a game, right? The more they interact with the app and the more data they give, the more questions they answer, the more points they have. And employees can reward each other. So let's say, one of my employee A was helped by employee B. Employee A can give some coins to employee B. Thank you, and then for helping me out doing this. So it starts to create a culture of giving, of sharing. Again, for me, our culture is there's a couple of things. Relationships important, giving is important. For us, it's about building the future and growth, right? So based on what we think our values are, we start to build a culture around that. Those what we call key behaviors.
Okay, got it. So what are some common challenges and also mistakes entrepreneurs make when they are trying to build their A team?
So I think the hardest part of any team building is hiring. We always make mistakes and we're going to make mistakes. So I've made some bad hires. I bet every SME boss will say, this person on resume, they talk to them, wow, perfect. But somehow when they come in, it's just not connected. And one of the biggest issues we have is that as an owner, right, we have an owner mindset. Meaning we can work 24 hours a day, doesn't matter. Because it's our thing and we're the owner and live and die. Our life and our livelihood, everything is integrated. Now for the employee who comes in, they don't think like an owner. They think like an employee. So they come in and they say, okay, I work 8 to 5, you give me work, I do, you don't give me work, I don't do. That guy, he say, hey, come on, you have to find work. But people don't think like that. So one of the things I think we have to understand is that employees think like employees, owners think like owners. So for us, we need to understand how employees think, and then we need to start making sure we build our business around the way they think and enable them to succeed. So we got to create an environment that enables them, challenges them, that pushes them. So I always say the mistakes we make sometimes is we got to know the employee. We got to know them so we know what their strengths are. Some employees are good at this, some employees are good at something else. So once you know them, you can focus them. So the starting point is knowing them. The second point is we need to focus them. So focus them on work that they will be effective in, not work that you think that you may say, I need this work done, but they may not be effective. You find the most effective person, you focus them. And then the only way you get them to work like owners is if you care for them. So when you show care, when you show concern, people will go above and beyond for you because they start to say, and you see this with many SMEs, like we are like a family, I cannot leave. And that's because there's a care element. Now, the last reason is why they leave is, look, I know them, I focus them, and I care for them, but they still leave. Now, the reason why they leave is because you don't grow them. And many SMEs, we are small, and a big company comes in, I will jump. Not because they don't like me or because they don't like the work or because they don't care. It's just that I got a chance to grow, right? So as an SME owner, the last thing you do is you got to find ways to grow your people. You got to find a new project sometime. After a person works 2-3 years, you say, okay, I got to find a new project and give them something different. Take them out of their role, put somebody else. And when you start growing them, you start to see your business also grows, right? So high performance teams is predicated on that. You got to know them, so assess them, understand them, spend time with them. You got to focus them, give them really focused work, and be very clear about the work you give them. You got to care for them, right? And make sure they know that you care. And the last part, you have to grow. And it's not easy, especially the growth part. Because we are once you got a business, it's like, okay, my business just hit the nail. You hit nail, you hit this, you hit. So after a while, this guy very good at hitting nail. But after 2 years, he don't want to hit nail anymore. He want to do something else because he's not growing, he's not learning. Right? So you have to make the sacrifice, take him and put him somewhere else or put her somewhere else and find somebody else and retrain them. But when you do that, you will start to see people stay because I got something different. But you also start to see your business grow because more people have more capability comes into the business. Now, I got 3-4 people can do the same thing. 4-5 people can do the same thing. Wow. When people go holiday also, you can just cover for him. Okay. It becomes different. And the problem with many SMEs is I got one person can do one thing. When the person leave for holiday also very hard. Right? And this typically in many SMEs, this is a typical problem. But the growing part is very important.
So would you say like the growing part is like employers should start to, like buy courses or invest in courses for their employees to go for free, that kind of thing?
Part of it is that, but I think the best way to grow in an SME is not just courses. It's actually giving them assignments. So let's say, and many of this, like for example, when I say, okay, let's do some new stuff in digital side. So the easiest thing is for me to do it myself, because you're thinking about it. For me, instead, I'll say, okay, why don't you work on this for me? I'll work with you on it, and then we co-work on the project. And then if it becomes a big enough project, you leave that job and you come and do this new job, right? And then we find somebody else there now. So now what happens is you and an employee are working together to build something new. So sometimes, and that's huge learning, because that employee don't know anything, you also don't know anything, you all learn together. Okay, how do we create our own podcast, or create a new channel, or do digital marketing, or do something, nobody knows, right? I mean, the reality is you go to experts, so they all are learning on the go, right? A lot of these things. So why not take an employee and invest in growing together with them? See, to me, that's the most powerful growth one.
Okay, do you get like this scenario where like this employee after even like 2 to 3 years or even 4 years, they prefer to do what they are currently doing, and then suddenly when you tell them, okay, let's work on a new project, then they'll be like, oh no, I have to learn everything from scratch again. This is like a disaster. Yeah, what do you do about it?
There will be. So you see, it goes back to the know part. If you know your employee and you help to focus them, right, you know that this is the type of employee, they are incremental learners. They learn slowly and they like to stay in a long role.
Yeah.
So what I do with those, I encourage them after 4-5 years. I had one, stay with us for 10 years. And in fact, we encourage that person ultimately to find a role outside, right? Because I said, look, here you're limited in scope to these kind of roles. Even though we would love to stay and do the same thing over and over, it's not good for you, right? So 5 years in one role, another 3 years in another role, another 3 years in another role. After almost 11 years, but we know that person. That person is not a exponential learner. Now, at the same time, there are some people 6 months they know already. I'm expert at this. And they're itchy, they want to try something new, right? So once you know a person, I'm simply saying 2-3 years, but the reality is for some smart, fast learners, 1 year already, they will be bought in a row. For some people, 5 years is not enough. I'm still learning. Okay, right? But as you know them, growing them is dependent on that person. Some people you grow acceleratedly, some people you grow incrementally. But you need to know your employees.
Okay, so just now I think you mentioned that many SMEs make like the wrong choice in hiring. Like once they hire, then they find that it's not a good fit, right? So what are some tips that you can give to SMEs to hire better employees and make the better choice?
Yeah, so I think sometimes the interviews don't really work well. So I realized one of the things is, I always have interviews not sometimes in the office. I have in a cafe or in a Starbucks and so on. Get to know that person a bit, understand their motivations. I think many times we look at skill. But the mistakes a lot of us make is that we hire for skill, but we fire for attitude. We hire for motivation. We hire, when you are upset with an employee, usually it's not because they cannot do the job. They don't want to do the job, or they have some attitude issues and so on. So for me, I think we start to hire for attitude, for behavior, for motivation. You understand what motivates them, why should they join us, and so on. And if there's some red flags, take your time lah. You don't have to hire. You can space it out. Sometimes we take a month or two. And the other thing I do is that I actually have a policy where I have a squad of people that just work for me, do special projects. And who are these people? These are people, I call this a BE team because my culture is a BE, going beyond expectations culture. But what I do is I set up a separate SWAT team. Whenever I see a person, I've been in a restaurant, I meet somebody, this person is really good. After a few interaction, I got no job for them in the company, but I'll just hire them. I say you come and hire, then I'll tell my bosses in my organization, anytime you need employees, you just come and take from my pool, my BE pool, right? Because I always overhire in my pool, and then they do projects for me. And then whenever somebody needs an employee, they don't have to go outside. They say, just take from my pool, because these people are very good people. They're very flexible, they're very agile, they can do anything, right? And so what happens is, whenever I see good people, I just hire. Doesn't matter, don't have to wait for a job. And I tell them, no job, this one you just come and work for me on special projects.
I see.
And then when the time comes, somebody will. So that's another way. You don't have to hire 10, 20 people. I hire 2, 3, right? I always have 2 or 3 excess people. But that's another good way. When you find good people, you got no job, bring them in lah. Because it's very hard to find good people, you see. For SMEs, not easy, you see. And then when the time comes, you always have a person for a job, you see.
I think like what you said, like it's maybe it's easier to hire based on skills. Like let's say if I want to hire a web developer, there'll be like thousands of web developers outside. But then to hire a web developer that has a good attitude, I think that one is very rare. It's a rare gem that, And also during interviews, like everyone will try to portray themselves as like fantastic attitude and whatnot. So I guess it's a challenge that you can only see the real attitude once they come into your company. Or rather, maybe like for yours, it's like they are in your special team first. You can also monitor from there. Then only you integrate it into the main team.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, so because now it's like the COVID era, right? Like 2 years of COVID already, and everyone's like working from home. So do you see like a challenge in the communication part? Because now it's like instead of face-to-face communication, now everything is done virtually.
Yeah. So, in terms of virtual communication, I think this is again something that after a while we get good at it lah. And it requires some sort of practice, right? For example, the early days, when again, the most ineffective one is when we communicate in a town hall Zoom, right? There's so many people who will listen to what you say and misinterpret what you say. Right? So what you need to do also is to break down the communication. So what I do is I have big communication with the whole team. So 80, 90 employees, depending on your SMEs. Then I will go down to smaller teams, 20, and we communicate. And sometimes bring the smaller teams, you bring them face to face and say, look, let's talk a little bit about what we shared and what are your clarifications and questions. So I think there's a need for you to re-communicate and retranslate according to their language. Right? So that one is very important lah. I think the other thing is to have tools. Many organizations don't invest in the tools to be able to effectively communicate in a work from home environment. Now, remote working is a given already. My team, nobody comes to work one. So we understand it. So straight away we said, okay, we have to make the investment happily. We have to make the investment Nico. We have to make, certain investments. No choice. You have to make those investments. It's not massive like, it's 1,000 ringgit here. It's a few hundred ringgit here and there. It's not expensive on digital tools. Even Google, right? I mean, the Google Enterprise, you have to invest, right? Or whatever. I mean, you can do Microsoft Enterprise version, if you're depending on what type of SME. I know Microsoft has some good packages now. Likewise, Google, right? So we all have to, because you need the Google Meets or the Microsoft Teams or the Zooms and so on and so forth. I mean, that's just basic. Then goes to next level, and next level. So for me, the investments in technology is absolutely important, because you don't invest, you cannot scale. Right? I think the next investment that you need to do is you got to start thinking about how to train yourself as a leader to be able to communicate effectively. And you have to make sure you schedule in check-ins. So one of the mistakes I made early on is like we assume face-to-face, because somehow when people got problem face-to-face, they will come to your office, or you will see them drop, people will drop by and say what's happening, and you get insights. But when you're virtual, you don't get these checkpoints, right? So that's where we made a Happily investment, because now in Happily I can see on a daily basis data to say, this thing got problem, this thing got alignment problem, this thing got relationship problem, okay. So I can take some action. In the past, as a boss, you got sixth sense one. You will know when the team has a problem. But when you're virtual, what kind of sixth sense? You really need to make those investments. So to me, I encourage you to invest in technology, but also invest in rituals and invest in practices, in checkpoints, in your own schedule. Schedule it in. Once a month, I need a business review. Once a month, I need this. Once a month, I'll put in those checkpoints and make sure you have those rituals. Translate those rituals virtually. Yep.
Okay, brilliant. So to wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience before we go?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of things, but I think as an SME, one of the biggest challenges we have is especially if you're in Malaysia, right? The domestic market is small, and the domestic market is sort of not really moving, right? So I think one of the big things that we need to start thinking is, with COVID and what has happened, right? It's opened up a global market for us. It's enabled us to communicate. So to me, in the past, we have small operation in India, in Thailand, in Singapore, and a few other places. In the past, the Indians would say, Roshan, where you come and visit me, we talk business together. Da, da. Today, I can do work in India without being there. I've got customers now in the Middle East, in the US, and so on. And I don't have to be there, and they don't even want me to be there, right? So it's opened up a whole new market and opportunity, right? I don't think we are really taking advantage of this opportunity, right? Of really being able to do business with the world without having to travel, without the expense of needing to be there, right? So my advice to you, if you're SME, is like, look, take advantage. The world is your oyster today, right? Build global products, and don't just think of Malaysia or Southeast Asia as a market. Think of the world as your market, and I think you can really start to see yourself scale in a big way. Now, when you do that, that means you can hire global teams. So one of the things I found that was so interesting is that Indonesians are so hungry, and the price of an Indonesian versus Malaysians are one third, a quarter, a fraction of it, So for me to get a top Indonesian talent, and I got 4-5 now working for us, versus a Malaysian, there's far outweighs the price ratio in it. So I'm like, I got like Leaderonomics.com. If you go /BM /BI now, I got Indonesia. I've got Indonesia. I've got in Bahasa. I've got now starting in Mandarin. I've got employees in Mexico. I can actually employ employees anywhere. With TransferWise, you can pay them. There's nothing stopping you from having a global workforce, being an SME in Malaysia, right? So leverage it, right? Happy to share more on that. But to me, be an SME in Malaysia, but hire people globally. Don't look at Malaysians only, right? Bad news for Malaysians, that Malaysians need to be more competitive. But good news for SMEs in Malaysia, I can hire anywhere, and I can get them to execute anywhere, right? So including in Malaysia, right? So that's outstanding opportunities for SMEs to grow around the world.
Wow, I think the point that you make is brilliant on the global thing. Is like the COVID has made it the shift the mindset really, like what you said last time. Let's say if I want to do business in UK, I need to fly over to UK and discuss with their team over there. But now I can just do it via Zoom. And then if I close,
you hire a UK employee, and pay them through TransferWise and other things, right? And they can operate from you with no legal structure, right? Because your billing is all anyways credit cards and automated, right? It's all Stripe. You have technology in place to enable you to have global billing, right? So nothing's stopping you, right? And I'm even having global interns now. The last year I had 35 global interns from 19 different countries, right? From Brunei to Vietnam I had all these interns from all different countries, right? US, I had a couple of US interns, a Mexican intern, and the UK, and so on. It's an unbelievable opportunity, like just don't. To me, it's like, whoa, why are not more Malaysian organizations, SMEs, right, taking advantage of it, right? And we're not obligated, right? We're not obligated to the government or anybody, right, to facilitate. Countries like Indonesia, hungry talent. In Vietnam, hungry talent. You've got a lot of very hungry people, right? Leverage it, man.
Wow.
So that's my final take.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I hope that we can get you back in for another topic based on these global ones, and I hope to chat with you further. So yeah, thanks Roshan for coming onto the show. Check out Leaderonomics down below, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Yep. No problem. Thanks a lot.